thank you, everybody. This is the next edition of Desert Island Diaries. And the logic behind these sessions is that we interview brilliant public sector servants so that we can learn and glean their insights from their careers. And I've done several of these now, and they've all worked out to be really, really good. I'm hoping this one's going to be good. The slight difference is, and the question in my voice is, the tables are turned today. So Minesh, that I interviewed last week for his Desert Island Diary, is now going to interview me. So we're going to turn the tables, and I'm going to hand over to Minesh, and I'm hoping that I can do as good a job that he did last week. So over to you, Minesh.
Thank you, Anthony. And it's a great pleasure to reverse roles here and interview you, because I think you are as good a public servant as any. So it's important we talk about you, and with a bit of a twist in a way, in the sense that I'm going to largely wish us to focus on you rather than work. When we talk about you, I'm sure we're going to talk about work in some way as well, but the focus is largely going to be you. And in some ways, Anthony, if you're happy, I would like you in some ways to get naked. And what I mean by that is be as sincere, as open as you can be.
Yeah.
We in our busy professional lives, social lives, put a lot of clothes on, some perhaps genuinely needed, or some as part of the world we live in. And a lot of, I feel, improvement at individual level, at team level, at organization level needs to be by being a bit naked in terms of what the truth is. I think if we reach that state of mind as individuals and teams, I think we would be much better. Do you agree with that?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and I think
you can always edit out if I get too naked.
yeah, you can. I think that's okay. So I'm gonna sort of it's going to be a different sort of Desert Island Diary. So I'm going to actually start not at the beginning. I'm going to start at the end.
Okay.
So my first question, Anthony, to you is, what would you like written on your tombstone?
Oh, crikey. I think probably to have been a good human being and to have made a positive impact on the world. That's probably my summary. And that's just, I haven't thought about that pre this. I'm going to be struggling for all these questions. I know you're going to ask me some really tricky ones. So I've not prepared any of these, just to let everybody know, but I think that would be it.
No, I think those are as good couple of lines as you could get, and I think that's important. Obviously, that's why I said it's about nakedness, because it needs to be what really is within you, in your thinking, in your heart, mind, and soul. So I think that's a good start. Can you tell me about a day, if you want to look back, and this might take a few sort of moments for you to think about, a day when you learned the most?
Yeah, and possibly because we've got a live session tomorrow, this is why this is so fresh in my mind and I'm coming to it straight away. But I had a eureka moment when I was studying Professor John Vervaeke's work, and this is getting on for 2.5, 3 years ago. And it was literally mind-blowing for me. It has changed my life completely, and it's cognition and how the brain works and combinatory explosion and those topics that just made me go, oh my God. And it has literally changed my life since. It enables me to see everything and everyone in a completely new light. So I would think that's been the trigger, the catalyst for a massive amount of change for me. So I would say that, and there's another major influence on my life as well, a guy called J. Krishnamurti, who an Indian scholar, philosopher, I don't know if you're aware of him, but
Yeah, I know Jay well. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've read him quite a bit as well. Yeah.
so that was another major change. So I was in my 20s then, studying for my professional qualifications as an accountant, and I just stumbled across a secondhand bookstore walking through Manchester in a lunch break, and just spotted this book on fear by J. Krishnamurti, and that was another complete life changer for me. So they were the foundations for completely new paths of learning.
Yeah, and I think in some ways they're about thinking, and in some ways a different way of being, isn't it? It's a different way of being.
Yes, yeah, completely. And the two of them, John Vervaeke's done a 50-hour lecture series on awakening from the meaning crisis. He's just released a part 1 of the book on it as well. And that whole 50 hours of lecture is incredible. So you learn so much, but actually it's there's real synergy for me between the J. Krishnamurti work and his work. It all ties together to the point where you feel like there's universal truths, and they're coming at things from completely different angles, but the universal truth is aligned. And I find that more and more.
Yeah, it's almost all encompassing. In some ways, I sometimes call it a state of super consciousness, where you are at a level where everything becomes one. It's a the unified theory of everything, so to say.
Yes, yeah. And I'm messing up your questions a bit, but these are just things that are coming to me as we go. Viveki got me doing some meditation as well.
Yeah.
And all this ties into the cognition. But if you can meditate so that you can, I think it's called a view from above, where you almost levitate out of your body, over your house, over your town, over the city, over the earth, over the Milky Way, and you start to look at things from that angle and that Gestalt picture, and then meditate again, and then go down to real feature levels of your heartbeat and the blood pumping through your veins and your organs, and very minute details of things. That's amazing brain training for, I think, for life, but also for work, because you need that complete picture from top to bottom to be able to generate wisdom. And all this is connected for me as well.
Yeah, and I think in some ways that whole practice also grounds you. It generates a degree of humility, doesn't it? So it's sort of it all brings it together. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be many more to come, but so far, what do you see, Anthony, as your biggest achievement?
Oh, I think it would be, and this gets a bit cringy because you don't want to talk about yourself too much like this, but I think I would say being a parent, being hopefully a decent husband, but I'm pretty sure we've been great parents to our 2 sons. So that it's hands down best achievement. I think they're both really decent human beings.
Well, that's good to know. And I guess that brings me to a related question, not necessarily the same answer, but it might be related. And the question would be, what's your greatest joy?
Well, I'll link it back to family again, because that family experience, and friends as well, but it's humanity, isn't it? It's relationships, and it's those experiences with your loved ones and your best friends that are ultimately the best in your life. But I did a post on this the other day. I was doing some work, doing a piece of Insight Genie work, development work, and you get in the flow of doing some work like that you absolutely believe in throughout your bones that this is going to be incredibly powerful and help a lot of people, and that's complete joyous for me as well. So doing work that feels like you're going to contribute and do some great stuff with, again, is another one. It's that they're both, again, almost spiritual, I think.
They are, and I think I responded to your post because in a lot of ways I find creativity in some ways is one of the best paths to spirituality. It's a state, when you are in a creative state, you almost are in that super conscious state where the cosmos seems one. You're not tied down with silly sort of barriers and demarcations and stuff. So I think in that sense, I sort of almost use the word curiosity is as close to creativity is as close to divinity as we can get. And within that creativity has to be some degree of curiosity as well. Okay, so suddenly now flipping the coin and talking about your achievements and joy, the next question, I guess, in a way, is tell us something about what you see as your biggest failure.
Oh, biggest failure. I'm quite philosophical with those sorts of questions, so I don't really see anything as a failure. I'd see everything as a learning curve. Now, the biggest one that I would say, if you were going to look at it in almost a traditional way, was, again, a lack of knowledge and a lack of wisdom. This was. So I've always been itching to change and improve things. So I get really frustrated with the status quo. I get really frustrated with people not wanting to improve things. And I can spot things that are not right. And I get really frustrated if people just are happy to go along with it. And I can't bear it. So my early career, sort of first 10 years in the private sector, I think the longest role I was in was 2 years, because I just had to move on. I had to just keep creating and keep doing stuff. And I've had that all my life, I guess. And I got to the point where I'd been working for some big businesses in finance, commercial type roles. And I'd almost learned that if we've got a good business case and a strong proposition and we can make a good case, we'll get the funding, because these organizations were huge. And we could get stuff done. And I had a big idea about a business that I set up called Property Jigsaw. And the concept was a loyalty card. I'd been working for MBNA credit card bank before, so I'd learned how loyalty and brand loyalty, you could change things and how those cards worked. I'd also been familiar with the social media, because this is going back quite a few years now. This was probably 2005 when I first started doing this.
Yeah.
But I started to understand how the power of social media and how we could bring that together, and the power of eBay. And I created a bit of a conglomerate idea of eBay versus loyalty card in the property sector, and the fact that people couldn't trust and get decent tradesmen. So it was like a combination of loyalty around tradespeople, the power of a credit card, loyalty card, and eBay type rewards. So if you used Property Jigsaw, you'd get some discounts on your next use of property. So you might buy your paint through us and get a discount. Then you'd go off and find your plumber, and then you could do everything with property. So I'm convinced it was a great idea. There's other businesses that have sprung up since.
Yeah.
But I tried to do most of it myself.
Yeah.
And got to the point where, like, okay, I've run out of cash now. I've remortgaged, credit cards utilized. I need to bring in some investors. And that was a world of pain, a real world of pain. I got stung so badly that, that cost a lot of pain and money and anguish in the family. So that would be the biggest failure in the traditional sense, mainly because it caused pain to the family.
But as you said, important learning. But I guess sometimes also we have to understand that it may not be time for a particular idea, or you might sort of in some ways, in a cosmic way, being redirected to something different, so the door doesn't open. So I think it is important to see that in that bigger sense.
That's a really important point. I think, and I've learned through that pain, for future things not to fall into that trap as much. But I tend to, I don't want to blow my own trumpet here, but I tend to have some ideas that are before their time. I'm there. It is a good idea. It will come. It's just that right now people are not ready for it.
Yeah, it's sometimes if either it's too sort of ahead of its times, yeah, it almost needs to generate some momentum and stuff, and that is painful because you are sort of itching to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see it. I can see it, and nobody else can see it.
Yeah. So I think, but I think that's life. So again, sort of looking back at your life, Anthony, any so two parts to this question in a way. So one side of the question is any major regrets in life, and the second part is in a way, if you could change something about your life so far, if you had that choice, what sort of stuff are we talking about?
I think if I could do anything differently, it would be to try and learn the wisdom that I've developed in up to my sort of 50 plus years and get that embedded at my 20 plus years. That would be, my God, I feel like the damage I could do if I was 20 now instead of 53 now would be incredible. So I'm trying to instill a lot of my knowledge now into my kids that are that sort of age so that they can do amazing things. But I guess everybody's in that boat, aren't they? If only we could know what we know now, but 30 years earlier, that would be amazing. Regrets wise, I think it's hard because it's like, can you regret being so ambitious and trying to change stuff and do big stuff? I don't know if you can. I don't know if I can. The only regret is the impact on the family, the negative impact on the family of working ridiculous hours and losing money to the point where it puts pressure on the family. That's personally, this is the Krishnamurti thing coming through probably. I could literally live in a shed with nothing, and I'm not that bothered. I'm not really genuinely not that bothered about finance and things, but when you've got family to look after, it's a different matter. But yeah, I don't think I really regret it. I personally don't regret trying to drive stuff, even when it's painful. But yeah, it's the only regret is any pain you might put on your loved ones.
Yeah, which is an important part of who we are, and our responsibilities, our affection and love for them. Okay. So you started your cup of tea. I'm sure. Are we looking for cocktails coming in soon? What are you going to drink in an hour or so?
So I've thought about this. Is the only one I've had a chance to think about.
Yeah.
If we're in a pub in Scotland,
Yeah.
it would be whiskey and water, like a nice whiskey.
Okay.
If we were on a country walk in some great British countryside, it would be a pint of Boddington's halfway round. Boddington's bitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
But given that we're on the hammock,
yeah,
and it's hot, it's going to be an Aperol Spritz.
Oh, nice. I like those as well. Okay. Good. So we've just sort of tickled some nice memories there, but let me maybe tickle some not so nice memories. What's your biggest fear?
Again, maybe this is the Krishnamurti coming through, but I really don't really have many fears. I'm trying to think. Fears wouldn't be for me; it would be for my family members, I think.
Yeah, but that's the genuine fear for you as well. So it's what sort of not being able to look after them, or sort of worrying about them, their health, their well-being, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it would be the normal things. Can they live a decent life? And actually, if we wanted to get really deep quite soon on, one of the things that I've put in the book, and again, this is driven by, I've tried to put my own unique slant on it for public sector, but one of the things that John Vervaeke talks about is ask yourself, what is life about for you? What is the purpose? What is the meaning? So most people tend to just get froze by that question and takes quite a bit of reflection. But when I did that exercise, for me, it was making sure I'm looking after my wife and kids. Is a foundational key platform. And then the second one was the environment and trying to do something really significant to improve the environmental situation. And which is partly where Insight Genie is coming from as well, so that we can as communities collate more knowledge more quickly to do stuff with that. And I'm hoping in the near future that I can really get stuck into the environmental issues through the use of Insight Genie. And what I'm trying to do to start that is to get that in place in the public sector so that we've got a foundation, a strong foundation, and then from that we can build into that environmental piece
around the community. No, I think that definitely makes sense. And I'll come back to this question of why do we think we are here, or what we want to do, or what's the meaning of life. So I'll perhaps bring in my perspective about that towards the end in a perhaps philosophical way. But carrying on this conversation, if you look back, what do you think has been the most impactful conversation of your life? It doesn't necessarily have to be professional one. It could be any conversation that you feel has had the most important impact on you and your life.
Would books count?
No, unfortunately not. I can ask you a question about books after this one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That just my foundational thought then was, books have been my educator and been the profound impactor of me and changed the direction of my life. And then I think about conversations. Oh, crikey,
I can give you an exit strategy to this question, but let you try first. I think I want a bit of sweat on your face first.
I'll give an example of it wasn't a verbal conversation. And I think this man's dead now, so I don't think I'm going to get sued. I was a show jumper in my early career.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, nice. Okay.
So I've got the picture behind me. You can't tell it now because I've got my background up. So there's a whole array of stories around this, I'm telling you. But I was cutting this bit of the story short. From 10 to 21, I was doing nothing but horses. And I got to ride for England on an under-18s team and that sort of stuff. So it was all very sort of successful at that level. Apart from I completely switched off school because I was going to be the next Harvey Smith, so school didn't matter. And I was riding at one point when I was at 17 for a famous show jumper. Maybe I don't need to name him actually, but he was a famous show jumper in the world of show jumping. Everybody would know him. And there's pressure in show jumping world to progress the horses through, and there's quite a bit of cruelty involved. And again, I won't go into the detail of that either, but I was at that point where I said, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. But I was riding this horse and I said, I'm not prepared to do that. And he took one of the metal cups off the fence, which is heavy. It's like a heavy piece of metal. Threw it at my head and I felt it whiz past my face. And I had that moment of, oh my God, this is insane. I have got to leave this career that my whole life's been built on. I can't do this anymore. So that was a profound, non-normal conversation. It was more of a physical conversation, but really profound, really profound. When that moment of realization, when that your whole life that's been 7 years in the making, and you've had unbelievable commitment to up at 6 a.m, working 7 days a week, is essentially, you think at that point, gone. Because this guy was so famous and influential that's your career over.
But I think again, it's going back to that philosophical state of mind where one door closes, another will open, and in some ways, quite a profound experience. So going back to that conversation question, which you haven't actually answered.
I had a recent one. That's a conversation. It was a Desert Island Diary, but I'd met Chris Cooper in advance to the Desert Island Diary, and that conversation was another. Oh my God, that's an amazing experience, and really opened my eyes to a lot of workings of more advanced lean methodology and things that I'm aware of because I've studied bits and bobs of it. But speaking to somebody like that, that's such an expert, was another like really, really profound session.
But I guess one of the things we forget is, at the end of the day, some of our most profound conversations are with our own selves, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
And when in some ways you are saying, oh, I have a conversation through books, but actually in a lot of ways, as you're mulling through the words of the books or the ideas of the book, you're actually having a conversation with yourself, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think those are the most important conversations. At the end of the day, that's perhaps the most important conversations of our life is what we do with ourselves. And I think we sometimes forget that. We sometimes forget that. And as you mentioned, books, we could have done this question towards that, but anyway, let's do it now. So so obviously, Desert Island, choice of book, choice of song.
Well, so I think I would go with the John Vervaeke books. So he's got the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. Book 1 is out now. I'm hoping before I get shipped off to the island that book 2's out. The reason being that he's a really, really decent human being, and he's introduced me to so many things, so many philosophers. He's introduced me to Plato and Socrates that have been mind-blowing for me. And there's just such a lot of content in terms of centuries of brilliance through the human cycle of creativity, and brilliant stuff, really brilliant stuff. So I would definitely take that, because you can read it and reread it and reread it and constantly find new things in it. And I think Professor John Vervaeke is a philosopher king, I would say. He's fantastic, really good human being.
And so for people who don't know him or haven't read his books, what sort of would be your tagline to entice them to pick one up?
I would say go to our live session tomorrow. It'll be recorded, so they'll be able to pick it up, because a part of tomorrow's session is essentially that I'm riding on the giant's shoulders of his shoulders. But it's the cognition side of it. So he's a cognitive scientist, but he's also an amazing philosopher as well. So yeah, I think it's the sort of things that we're interested in. It's why do we think the way we think? What is meaning in life all about? That's all encompassed. So he's bringing a cognitive science angle to those big questions in order for us to live happy, productive, decent lives.
And I think and hopefully tomorrow's session will be energizing and lively one. And what about the song? What sort of song are we thinking about?
Oh, I don't think many people will know this guy, but he's another real profound part of my life. I can remember being in stables when I was about 16, listening to this guy called Roy Harper. He's a English folk singer, really.
Okay.
It's had some collaborations with Led Zeppelin and Kate Bush and people like that. He's still going, believe it or not.
Is he? Okay.
Still going, but yeah, some really, really good stuff. It's of a certain type. I can't imagine everybody's going to love him, but I really do.
And what is it in his songs? Is it the lyrics? Is it the music? Is it sort of the whole sort of I guess package? What is it that connects you better with him?
Yeah, it's more the lyrics, I would say. But he's a brilliant guitarist. He's a bit of a romantic as well, so I like all those things.
Okay, good. We're building a picture there.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I said at the start, I'm gonna do it in a different way, and I'm sort of almost deliberately steering away from work and work-related stuff. Though some of it, I guess, will get sprinkled. My focus is on you, and in some ways, talking to you and not talking about work. I think the predominant thing that has come out is family, isn't it? family and your eagerness to make things better. So those are the two main things that have come out. So I don't know your family, so maybe introduce me to your family. So who are we talking about here?
Okay, so I met Lynn, my wife, in early '99, I think it was. Might have been '98. Yeah, probably was early '98 actually. In Manchester, we met in a nightclub, and I came up with the cheesiest chat-up line you'll ever hear, which was, "I've got a red shirt on and you've got a red top on. We should dance," or something like that.
Okay.
And God knows how, but it worked.
But it worked. It worked. It seemed to have worked, I guess.
Yeah, Fifth
Yeah.
Avenue in a club in Manchester.
Yeah.
And yeah, I suppose we were in our late 20s when we met, so we were both at that right time. It's that timing point that we made earlier, talked about earlier. Yeah. So Lynn's a teacher, secondary school teacher, deputy head teacher. I can't remember all the titles that they've got. They're a bit like the NHS. They've got more titles than.
Yeah. And they keep changing.
Yeah. Works ridiculously hard. We've got a culture in the family of working too hard. I think if one of the things we should change is working every hour God send. I suspect you're the same. But our typical story is we will get up early in the morning, we'll exercise, and then we'll finish work at 9, half 9 at night. That's Monday to Thursday. We try and finish early on a Friday, but we'll work at weekends as well. So I guess we're united that we both got that real work ethic. And then two sons, we've got George, who's at Sheffield doing a master's now in microbiology.
Yeah.
So he might have a bit of an NHS career ahead of him.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. And Charlie, who is just finished college last year, the last academic year, and he's just taken a year out to do some work, do some traveling, and then he's going to go to university next year.
Okay. Okay. So lovely to meet them, and I'm hoping some stage we'll get to meet them face to face. So now, one word each for the three of them. So just one word to describe your wife and your two kids. What would that be?
I would say for my wife, it would be giving.
Okay.
So she's very giving. So she'll make sure everybody else comes first before her. I'm close to her. I don't come first much of the time. You're always meanest to the people you're closest to. But generally, she really puts everybody on first.
Okay. No, that's lovely.
Including at work.
Yeah.
Charlie, I would say, is really kind and thoughtful, and bright as well. And George, I would say, he's doing really well. He came top of his course and his degree.
Yeah.
And I would say the one word for him would be determined and dedicated.
Okay. So yeah, useful adjectives. And now, if we flip the coin sort of for them, what sort of words would they use for you?
Oh, crikey. Painful. Annoying.
No, sort of leave the the usual kid parent adjectives aside. So first let's go to Lynn first. So what would be her top few words for you? What do you think?
I think she'd say faithful, dedicated, passionate, probably. Yeah.
And what about the kids? Are they different personalities? Are they similar, the boys?
Yeah, no, they're really different. They're really different. Yeah. So Charlie, I would say I don't know the word for it, but I think probably dedicated and supportive, probably. So he did a lot of professional football before he had a brain injury last year. So, I'd spend hours every week driving him to all these different places to train and tournaments and such like. So that was a big thing for us. And George, how would George describe me? I think probably loving and caring.
Okay, that's nice. Those
Tricky questions you've got for me here.
no, I think those are useful. There's a pattern to my mad questions, but I think there's a meaning to them, I hope. Is there anything else? There's a couple of things I need to wrap up with, but is there anything else while we are, so to say, on tape you want to talk about, Anthony?
I think it would be good to get into the meaning points a bit more, and also I think that there's definitely elements. I think from when we interviewed, I really gleaned a lot from your early life, and I think that's really insightful to help you understand what gives you the drive. And I think that early life experience is a massive trigger for these things.
It sure is. And do you want to maybe unearth a bit of that now, or do you want to?
Yeah.
Go on.
Do you want to go with the meaning first, or do you want to go with the
No,
early life?
I think the early life first, and then we'll perhaps wrap up with the meaning bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the early life stuff for me, I think, has definitely been quite influential in terms of my drive. So up until 10, I think my life was really, really normal. Solid family, mother and father. Not the most affluent upbringing, but absolutely fine, all solid. And then by the time I think I was 12, my father had started to have an affair, and it was a really, really messy and complicated breakup, and there was a lot of pain involved in the whole thing, to the point where because I was riding at that point and doing well, I got the opportunity to go and ride on a dealing yard in Lichfield. So I effectively left school at that point. I went to school just to get by without sort of the social workers getting involved, but I effectively didn't go that much and was not putting in any effort or attention into it. And for a short period, I was living in a horse box for 3 months in a barn. So that was a real, like, you grow up fast. I was 13 then. So that was a massive change. And then worked on different show jumping yards up until 21. So that was a really influential part of my life. And I think that enables you to grow up. But I think I'd always had that drive and energy from somewhere. A big thing that I didn't realize until I was a dad was how important that family life was. So I'd dealt with that parent split, and I was quite philosophical about it. Well, there's always two sides to every story and that sort of stuff. And only when I had my first child did that all reset, and I sort of went, I can't believe what went on. So that was a big, profound moment. Again, another big, profound moment. So yeah, these things have really driven me and influenced me for sure.
Yeah, and in some ways they sculpt you, isn't it? Like sort of rushing water, sculpts stones, and it's quite profound. It's quite profound. But I guess in some ways, makes you a better dad, a better family man, I presume.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. And then before I sort of talk about a bit in terms of the meaning, let's hear your thoughts about sort of meaning of life, meaning of what you think we're doing here, and how you sort of engage at that level in terms of work, in terms of family, in terms of sort of social, because you talk a lot about sustainability, environment and stuff as well.
Yeah.
So how does it all get the meaning in Anthony Lawton's head?
Yeah, so this, I think I've always had a little bit of this since my mid-20s when I was studying, and I picked up the J. Krishnamurti work.
Yeah.
So from that point, I've always had that feeling of I am nothing special. I'm as special as everything else is special. So I'm as special as that piece of grass, and we're all special. But me individually, I'm no more special than anybody else. And there's a lot of training and realization that ego is the root of all problems, really, that I really genuinely believe. So that's a big thing that I've taken forward. And then more recently, this last 3 years, the Viveki stuff, that first question that he asks is, okay, what is the purpose of your life? What's the meaning? What gets you out of bed in the morning? So the first one is family, it's being able to support them and in all sorts of ways. Second one's environment, and the third one is the public sector, which is what I'm really focusing on work-wise. And then the second question is that, okay, what are you doing to contribute to those things? And then when you ask most people that, and this is a sort of a exercise in the book, is people really think about that, come up with their versions of what's really the key for them. And most people go, I'm not really contributing to those things anywhere near as much as I want to, because I've got a ridiculous shift and I'm working nights and whatever, and I've got no time to do the things I really want to do. So that can be a profound shift and make you really start reevaluating your life and what is it you're working for, that sort of thing. So that is a big exercise for me. So the working on the public sector work with a view to do more in the environmental work, and always being around family-wise, always keeps me on the straight and narrow. So I always feel good because the work that I'm doing is contributing to those things that are the most important to me. And if I ever do feel like I go off on a slant and get depressed or whatever, or down or tired, always just think about those things, and it completely brings me back on track. So that is meaning for me. It's tying it into those things that really drive you. And the other thing that relates to this is Viktor Frankl. You might have come across. He's a psychiatrist originally, I think. And I think he's one of the very few survivors that survived 5 Nazi concentration camps. He's lived through 5 different camps. Unbelievable. And he's got a system that he designed called logotherapy. It's not marketing, it's meaning in life type therapy. And his big 3 themes are: you get meaning through your contributions, so the things that you do, so your skills, your expertise, your value, what you give to the world is how you get meaning. So that's a bit like what we were talking about with flow the other day.
Yeah.
And then the second one is what you receive, that unconditional love. So unconditional love from your family, or the sunset, or a beautiful river, or those sort of things, the gifts that you receive, that's where you get meaning from as well. And the third one was your attitude to things. So this is a brilliant example that I've remembered from the book. Was he was supporting a priest who had decades of brilliant life with his wife, and his wife had passed away. And from that moment on, he was ridiculously depressed, lost faith, really, really in a bad state. And Frankl said to him, would your wife have felt the same way if you'd have passed first? And he said, yes, she would have been absolutely destroyed and devastated as well. And Frankl said, well, that is your meaning. Your meaning is that you are sparing her this pain. And from years of misery, within that second, he's reframed his attitude, and he's now got a purpose, which is he is saving her that pain, and he's really happy with that.
Yeah. No, I think a complete reframing.
Yeah. So they're the 3 things that I keep in mind a lot as well, especially that reframing one.
Yeah, and I think useful to, I'm sure, passing on to your kids. I think the earlier they sort of get to some of this, as you said, the better it is. And I think, and in a way, similarly, when I look at, and I've sort of read sort of similar thinkers, I've sort of built quite a spiritual philosophical sort of path for myself. And in some ways, I think in a simple way, in this sort of human journey, we interact with human beings, we might interact with other beings, we might interact with what we think or believe as sort of non-living objects as well. And at the end of every interaction we have, if we are better off and they are better off, then job is accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it could be as simplistic as that, so that every interaction we have going through our normal day, whether it's in the tube, whether it's in a bus, whether it's online, whether it's talking to a patient, I think if both parties are better off, better than where they started,
Yeah.
and that's, to me, the meaning of life. And it all is in a connected way. I think that connectedness that you highlighted is very important, and sort of I use the term super consciousness for that you are at an orbit where actually you can see that it's all the same, isn't it? But you need to rise to that orbit. You can't sort of staying here, you can't see it. You have to go to that height to see it. So yeah, hopefully that's what we want to be. We want to have interactions with humans, with non-humans, that we are better off, which means that we have learned from them, I guess.
Yeah.
They are better off, so they've got something is brushed onto them. And what more could we ask? So hopefully your life, my life, the life of people near and dear to us sort of pans out like that. I want to finish on that sort of positive note, but I also want to finish on a special request.
Okay.
And that special request to you, Anthony Lawton, is I would suggest you watch this video with your family.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a good one. They can be the vets about whether it can go out or not.
No, I think it might be a good video to watch with your family.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Really good one. Yeah, and I'm just tying a few things together there as well in the conversation, which is just thinking about, did you mention being on a train and engaging with other people on a train?
Yeah.
It's almost, if you can let go of that ego that a lot of people have got, to the point where I'm rushing to one meeting to the next, and everything's about, I've got to make that meeting, I've got to impress that person. And you're stuck in that world. You miss that person on the train, and you miss that smile with that person. And actually, that is what life is about. We can, just a smile to a complete stranger is magic, or it can be.
It can, and we don't know. It might change the course of their day, isn't it? It could easily change the course of their day, their mindset. And simple kindness. I think when we get too focused on the task or the destination, the journey gets wasted.
Yeah, and the journey is so fleeting. Before we know it, we will be no more.
It is.
We've lost that precious time.
It is. So I think being kind, being human, is perhaps our biggest duty rather than anything else. So on that sweet note, thank you very much for your time. I wish you well. I wish your family well, and I do hope you watch this with your family, and then do feedback to me.
Yes, thanks. I'll reflect on the questions as well to see if we can set some of these up for the next Desert Island Diaries. I might get more people saying no if we've got these tough questions coming their way.
No, it was good. It was lovely to